Hi, welcome to today's live. I'm Suki Sodi, founder of Professional Selection, and I'm super excited to be joined today by Mark Hopkins. But before we get going, I just need to do a quick check. Can everybody hear me okay? See me okay? If you could just give me thumbs up, comment. As usual, this has been done via StreamYard. So if you make a comment and you don't give it permission to share your name, I won't know who you are, but we will see the comments. Just bear that in mind. So I'm going to give everybody, I can see people are starting to log in. So I'm going to give everybody a couple of more seconds. So as I said, today we're talking working from home. But it's not just working from home and some of the do's and don'ts and the tips and so forth. We're going to talk far broader. And on that note, I'm going to bring Mark Hopkins in.
Hi.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
I can, yeah.
Fantastic. So I'm pretty sure there's not many people out there that don't know who you are, but just in case, do you quickly want to let everybody know who you are?
Yeah, I'm Mark Hopkins. I'm a recruiter from the UK. I specialise in engineering and manufacturing recruitment across most of the UK and a little bit of Europe as well. And my company's called Thomas Lee Recruitment.
Perfect. Now, one of the things Mark and I have been talking about is work from home. And there is here's the tips and the do's and don'ts. But recently we've been talking a lot more about the wider implication. And I guess the best place for us to start, Mark, is actually share some of the results of the poll that I put out.
Yeah.
And which you and I were pretty shocked at some of the information that came back. Just to be clear, this is not a controlled poll, and I kind of wish I'd let it run for a longer period than I did, but we had quite a bit of response. 16% of people that responded wanted to go back to the office 100%, 5 days a week, similar to pre-COVID. 26% were at the other extreme, maximum work from home. And then, of course, not surprisingly, 58% was sort of like that hybrid. But one of the really interesting parts to this was the 16% I wanted to go back to work 100%. 38% were staffing HR professionals. And when you and I were talking about this yesterday, you asked me a really interesting question because we assumed that 38% is going to be managed for the most part,
Yeah.
managers and so forth. Before I share the actual percentage of management, non-management, Mark, what do you reckon out of that 38%?
So being a ex-manager in large businesses and small businesses at the same time, and kind of getting a feel for the flow of other managers that I've worked with in the past, I would say the lion's share of the statistic of people going back to work will be managers telling people we need to get back to work, we need to start hitting these KPIs. So it'd be interesting to hear what this figure is. That's my assumption anyway.
Okay, well, I'm really glad you asked me the question yesterday and I went back because I was shocked because I would have agreed with you. 52% were in non-management roles.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
interesting. I wonder
Yeah.
why. Why.
Well, it's interesting because we've got some kind of theories behind that, and let me tell you where I'm coming from. So, a couple of the individuals we know extremely well, and one particular individual, Chris's candidate, I'm surprised he chose the option he chose, as in full-time back to work. And when we explored it further, and Chris and I were speaking about all the conversations Chris and him, excuse me, and this candidate had been having, here's why he wanted to go back to work full-time. He felt, now he prefers to be in the office. Let's set the stage there. He felt by being in the office, he was being held far more accountable than those working from home. He felt he was getting far more pressure put on him because management could see, feel, touch, that type
Yeah.
of thing. And
Visibility.
the
Yeah.
visibility part of it, right?
Yeah.
And not only that, he felt management were too scared to put pressure on people working from home for fear of being seen as not having empathy and compassion and things like that. And the
Right.
other part of it was he felt people that are working from home. Now, he's part of a team of about 15, 20 people, right? So this is
Right.
by no means
Yeah.
a sweeping statement, but he felt those working from home got away with a lot more because they'd say, oh, we did do the activity, we just forgot to put it in the system. So that was really interesting.
Yeah, that is really interesting. And back in my agency days, when I used to work for people, if you didn't put anything in the activity or on the system, then if it's not tracked, it's not fact. So you didn't do the work. So it's interesting to see the workaround of that, and how managers to kind of justify not chasing people working from home versus people that are working in the office. It's like a whole attitude has changed completely. Or is this because of COVID? So they've been a little bit more understanding. So when COVID is kind of, we're all going to get the vaccine and life is going to start returning to normal, which in the UK we're slowly going that way. I know in Canada you've just gone into another lockdown. But when things start returning to normal, will that empathy start lifting, and will working from home become a lot more a statistical nightmare for recruiters or salespeople in general?
That's a really interesting point. And as you were talking, the thought that came to my mind was this individual, as a company, you'll, and I've got to be careful how I say this, but
Just say it. Just say
just say it, right?
Yeah.
We're Brits, we can say it, right?
Yeah.
They're looking after those people that are working from home at the expense, now I'm coming from his perspective, of his well-being. So
Right.
are they going to be able to retain him when the world opens up a little bit more? Because right now, in this particular individual's case, he is feeling, and these are my words, not his, resentment.
Okay.
Right? So
Yeah.
he's feeling resentment. He's feeling he's being penalized for working because he's in the office. So the visibility, and he's picking up the slack. Question becomes, as everything opens up and this new norm comes, company's going to lose him,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? The
Yeah.
company is going to lose him. So there's that piece of how a company's going to react to that. So I guess what I'm saying in this particular case, how do companies look after the people that are in the office without putting extra pressure on them?
Interesting. I think the people in the office, and this is just me being generalistic, I guess for individuals, this might not kind of place, but from a manager's perspective, if you're in the office or you're working from home, it's the same management metrics, in my humble opinion. So the people in the office are still the same KPIs, the same targets as the people working from home. So there really isn't much change. But if they feel there's a change, or they feel that the people working from home haven't got the same metrics and the same direction or the same figures to hit, then maybe the management might be the issue here, and they need to make it more exposed, like what the people from working from home are really doing over the people that are working in the office. Maybe that's the issue. And then you're going to go down the route of, right, everyone is going to be managed with one blanket, which then misses the point of people with desks which are doing really well, desks which are not doing really well, and then how to balance that methodology of management between the people that need the training and not. So from a management point of view, this is not easy. This is not
No,
easy at all.
but also if I just look at here in Toronto, we've got stay at home, come back in, right?
Yeah.
So schools are shut. So people got, I don't know, 18 hours notice, 24 hours notice, right? So you've got those people that are working from home. So now as a manager, I'm now trying to remotely manage someone that's working from
Yeah.
home. Friday, they were working from home, kids were at school, so to speak. Monday, suddenly schools are shut, online learning. So just that emotional pressure
Yeah.
and physical pressure on the people working from home.
Oh god, yeah.
How is a manager, and maybe I'm asking the wrong question here, but I guess where I'm going with this is speaking to all the managers that are listening to this, that are trying to navigate this.
Yeah,
What's some of the advice we can give them?
I think it's mostly clarity that you need to give to people on what your expectations are, but then also be very kind of empathetic and forgiving, because if your kids are home, because this happened to me in January, lockdown in the UK, my little one was his school basically closed down and he had to do remote learning on Microsoft Teams, and I had to literally give up my laptop for him for most of the day because the iPad wasn't working properly for it. So you had to kind of manage yourself around their lessons and then into the night. So you were doing 5 or 6 hours into the nights. I think expectations of some managers need to kind of more worry about, instead of the amount of time that's worked in the day, but more the activity that's done in the day. I mean, recruitment is a talking job. You should be talking to people. So there's a lot more you could do on the phone. You'd have to be sat in front of a laptop all day. So that's how I look at it anyway. Not so much KPIs, just the amount of activity you need to do to continue that conversation going with the various bits of work that you've got or not got. And you need to get more work in at the same time.
So,
That's
as you know, I've got loads of questions that have come in already. And the one that came in this morning, I'll come back to the one I sent you this morning. I'll come back
yeah,
to that
sure.
one in a second. But one of the questions that I've been asked is, how do you tell your boss you are actually struggling? And I'm not talking struggling necessarily in terms of tools to do the job,
Yeah.
right? So, how do you tell them when you are struggling, because there is this fear of losing your job, but don't want to be seen to be complaining. Companies are laying people off, don't want to give them reason and things like that. But how do you approach your boss if you are that individual?
It's to be honest with you, some companies you can approach straight away with problems. My golden rule whenever I needed to approach a manager or a person that owned the business that I used to work for, I always went with the problem and the solution at the same time. And what I was always seeking was the approval that I can use that solution more than anything. But it's about identifying the problem. What is the problem that you are struggling with? And you said not technical. Sometimes it could be technical. It could be they haven't got a very good laptop or mobile phone or something like that, and that's causing them some stress and annoyance. But if it's within themselves and it's a mental health kind of situation, and I'm not qualified on mental health, by the way, and I don't think your manager is either, but identifying what it is within that. You can't sit there and you're distracted by the dishwasher, or you're distracted by your dogs or your kids and stuff like that. A manager won't be able to solve that problem for you. You can only solve that problem. But if it's something that's truly affecting you, like you're isolated, for instance, then the solutions are quite easy to kind of come to. You mixed really well with certain members of staff, and start speaking to them again. Start listening to them. It's not always just the manager that can solve the problem. It's other members of the team that could solve the problem with you, because they might be going through the same problem at the same time. But as a manager, I think have that open forum with your staff. And even if there is threats of making redundancies within the business, be that manager, be that leader that kind of protects your team and has that open forum. It doesn't need to go up the chain to say that Joe Bloggs is not doing very well at the moment in mental health. Should we let him go? Don't be that guy. Look after your staff in that sense, but have that open forum and make it an afternoon of just chatting about things and problems, and let people talk and don't judge them for it at the same time. That's my kind of angle on that.
Yeah. So one of the things I've been saying to my coaching clients when they do have people working from home, and it's not perfect. It's not perfect by any means. Whatever you're using, Teams, Zoom, whatever. So I've been saying, get everybody, so have like a power hour, a sales afternoon,
That,
whatever, right?
these are the things, yeah.
That's it.
Activities as a team, as a group, that, and sometimes things come from that as well. People would say, "Oh, do you know what? Can we do this again this afternoon?" Why? And then, as a manager, you need to catch on to that as
Yeah,
well.
because what's
Why?
happening in the way I'm saying, everybody goes on, they're making calls, they're on mute. But every time you look up, you see other people you see, you read the expressions, and you'll get that one person that's kind of reflecting what you're reflecting. The other person's having a
Yeah.
great call. It's not ideal. It's not ideal by any stretch of the imagination. But the feedback I've had is that it definitely helps. The other piece I want to kind of bring on, and you touched on it as well, but you got to remember your manager is also potentially experiencing the same that you are.
Yeah.
So that's really important to bear in mind. Manager could be a single parent, could be uh, in a small flat, and they've only
Yeah.
got this little work area. So just
Yeah.
because they're the manager doesn't mean that they're not going through what you're potentially going
Yeah.
through. So there's going to be that level of understanding for the most part. But the piece I would say to both sides on this one is make sure you're having that conversation in that
Talk.
compassionate manner, right?
Yeah.
Conversation is that compassionate manner, but watch your words as well.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. Actually, there's a way of saying to certain people, especially as the manager or as the employee, how to approach an issue. And someone just mentioned then in the chat, overextended and too heavy of a workload is difficult to discuss with the manager. Think about the way you would say that to your manager. I've got too much work on. The manager will look at you and think, right, why have why do you think this is too much work? This is enough for me. Ask their expectations of what too much work looks like, and approach things in a. I know it's going to sound kind of, how can I put it? Going to sound kind of stupid to say this, but approach them like you're chatting to someone that doesn't understand what the hell you're going through. So approach them as if you're going to talk to a child. I know that sounds horrible saying it like that, but it's kind of use very simplistic and straightforward words and try not to be too emotive. And I get emotional about stuff, trust me on that one, but try not to be too emotive about it and be factual about it as well. So that is really important. And that's just, communication 101 in a business, really, isn't it? We talked yesterday about corporate business and how harder it gets the bigger the business gets, and the layers of issues and problems in it. And I would say if you're in a corporate larger company, go and get the staff manual and see what it says about workload and stress, because there's probably a piece in there that some clever HR person has written about it, and there might be a place to go, or there might be a phone number to phone, or there might be a person to speak to within that business as well. But it's being kind of straightforward about what you want and why it's affecting you.
But also, one of the things, and I am going to come back to this later because it feeds out of another
Yeah,
question that I got asked. Yeah.
yeah,
But one of the things right now is the last year companies downsized. Okay.
yeah,
Extremely lean. I would argue, and I can only speak for our industry, they went way too lean.
yeah,
Right? Way too lean. Profitability, or, forget the whys and wherefores, but the fact is they went way too lean. And especially if you're in that general staffing space, right? Food manufacturing and what have you, the pressure to still deliver to the clients is immense. So what you've got, I heard of a speaking to a branch manager here in Canada a couple of weeks ago. She was telling me that she had something like 20 odd job orders, open perm job orders on the board now, like your solid class A, class B type of thing.
yeah.
Yet her company would not let her bring back the
Gee.
perm consultant. But we're expecting the revenue.
It's yeah. I think I the only thing I could say towards that is I think I saw it in the UK last year. A lot of companies now are regretful for making so many redundancies, because I think the market turned within 3-4 months straight after that. People were expecting it to be even worse. Not bringing people back on, I think that might be a bigger issue. I think that might be a budgetarial issue within companies, that they think laying off people equals more profit because there's less to pay. But
Hey, you know what? I'm just going to go straight into that. I'm going to take the conversation there. You're
yeah,
right, because
yeah,
I can't speak for the rest of the world. So I'll just speak for Canada because this is where I know it to be fact. we were fortunate. Government stepped in with subsidies, all sorts of subsidies. Okay, so there was a rent, there was wages, there was so much. And companies did downsize, realign, all the rest of it. And those subsidies put them into profit. So I'm talking about companies that didn't necessarily make profit last year or the year before and that type of thing. And it's put them into a profitable situation. So the books look good, shareholders are happy, all that kind of good stuff. So they're reluctant to spend that money, open up the purse again, because you know what? It's going to send them back into the negative. Right. So, and I know this kind of takes us slightly off topic, but here's the thing. Your staff aren't stupid. They can see what is happening, especially when you as the country manager, CEO, are taking your bonus check and they're not getting their bonus checks and they've had to work 60, 70 hours, right? So that all leads into the employee stress. It leads into retention and all the rest of it. And the point I was going to make on that one is companies right now, well, they're always, but right now you look at it, right? Companies spending millions, and I'm not just talking about staffing industry, I'm talking about employers generally spending millions sponsoring ads, employer of choice. Oh, we got voted, UK's top 50 companies to work for, top 50 Canada, whatever the case may be. They're spending all of that money trying to build their brand. Well, back in 2008, the meltdown in 2008, I saw it happen then. People were looking at how are you treating your current people during the 2008 meltdown. But this time round, your brand has already been built by what you've done and how you treated your people.
That's right.
During the pandemic, like never before.
It's even worse now as well. In the UK, there's a pub chain called Weatherspoons.
Weatherspoons.
You know the Weatherspoons?
Yeah. Oh, God, yeah.
And the CEO of Weatherspoons, called Tim Martin, last year told his staff, because we had to close all the pubs in the UK, to go and get a job at the local supermarket if they want to work, and refused to pay them. And then we had furlough came in a week or two after that, and I think he started paying for them. But that alone caused a lot of people, and there's been apps created now called Not Weatherspoons, where people can now choose pubs which are not the Weatherspoons chain within that particular town, and they're everywhere, by the way. These Weatherspoons pubs. So born from that comment or that negativity of telling his staff to go somewhere else, he's now brought upon his brand a massive impact and negativity towards him, and people will vote with their feet in that circumstance. There's been circumstances where I kind of got involved last year with one big recruitment agency. I mentioned that they would probably let staff go to balance the books, and I had a raft of people from that particular company come to me, and it was quite a big big LinkedIn post I made last year, and they said, no, we're not doing that. And then a week later announced they were making huge redundancies off the back of the fact that COVID, and that alone, that's just me that they came after. Can you imagine all the other people that mentioned the same thing weeks after that saying the same thing as well? So yeah, it's quite interesting how letting large swathes of people go to balance the books in a situation where we need to be a lot more empathetic kind of goes. I know we're going off track from working from home here, but
it ties into it all, because
it does.
It ties, and that's why when we were talking about this, and especially yesterday, we realized we had a much wider topic than simply working from home because of the implications.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, and just sticking with that about the whole Weatherspoons, it's funny because friends were even messaging me saying, yeah, we're not going there next time. Next time you're back, right? So it was massive. The interesting part is, and again, I'm bringing it back to our industry, the companies that are in that situation, I can think of two big global players. Okay?
Yeah, and the same two you're thinking of is the same two I'm thinking
I know.
of as well.
And people are wondering why I'm laughing, because yesterday I was like, you cannot name anybody,
yeah,
right?
We're not naming them.
We're not getting into trouble. But what their staff are telling me, is we are making a move. They are planning their exit strategy. And honestly, I don't blame them.
Yeah, I don't blame him either. I am aware of two, maybe three-ish people, if it's the same team, within one specific country, one specific town in this country, who are on furlough but are doing work on the side for their friends in recruitment agencies. And I know that sounds bad, but they're not employed, but you're allowed to. By the way, you're allowed to work for someone else when you're on furlough. That's the laws, that's the rules, and their hope, I think is the right word, is if it takes off with their mate and they start making some money, they're quitting straight away that particular corporate job, because they've now seen the light through the trees. It's not as secure as they thought it would be. It was great working with some of the biggest companies in the country, but when it push came to shove, they were not looked after one bit, and if anything, they would cause more problems.
It's like you're personal, right? I choose to show up for people I care about. I choose to show up for my team, my friends. And in the same business situation, employers haven't necessarily shown up for their people the way the expectation was and the desire was, right? So I kind of now look at life slightly different. And of course, if we didn't have this pandemic, I probably wouldn't be thinking of it like this. I look at it and say, you know what? I choose to show up for my friends, my clients, my candidates, my team, my family this way. If they don't show up for me that way, that's okay. That's up to them. I'm staying authentic to mine. But you know what? I may also walk away, right? And it doesn't mean people are going to walk away bad-mouthing their employer and that type of stuff. They're just going to quietly walk away, and that's a dangerous place to be in any business.
Yeah, and it's not the top billers that do that. It's the people which I always find sit in the middle of the ground, and they tick over nicely, but they'll quietly walk away, and they'll do very well somewhere else. And I don't know why that is. There's a whole psychology behind that. I'm not too sure. Maybe something to prove or something. But they're the ones you need to worry about the most, because they can walk away with quite a lot of your business. Not purposely, not trying to steal it or anything like that, but because they gain so much insight into your business and how it works. They're taking away all the shit and they're working on the stuff that works really well, and they do very well from it.
Well, remember, we're in the people business.
Yep.
Right? So it's relationships. And I think it comes back down to, again, these are going to be some of the consequences companies are going to have, the price they're going to pay because of their short-sightedness or lack of leadership, whatever the word is, whether it's intentional or not. There's going to be these types of consequences. I just want to take a couple of questions. Oh, there you go. So true. How do you approach companies, clients who's currently hiring so they avoid this mistake? That's a great question. Do you want to take that one?
It's a difficult question to answer straight off the bat. I think the only way you can approach some of these companies and clients currently making the ones making these mistakes are the ones which are not have jobs. And I've seen this with some rec to recs actually in the UK. They have live jobs with certain companies and they can't seem to find people. I think some of them are still stuck in the past and they don't know where they're going next with what they need to do. And I think that's probably the most biggest issue, is recruitment businesses are still stuck in the past. If you're speaking from a kind of an applicant or a candidate perspective, you just got to really go to the interview and ask them the awkward questions that they don't want to answer to figure that out. There's no hidden, I don't know how to say it. There's an advertisement will say opportunities to work from home, or we haven't let a person go in the last 12 months. But ask them the questions why they didn't do that, or why did they let people go, and ask the awkward questions. I think that's probably the only way I could really approach that. Well, it's really difficult question to come across.
No, but yesterday when you and I were talking, and it actually was something I'd made a note of, the sales implication of working from home. So if you are a transactional salesperson, transactional manager, transactional this. And again, I'm talking about our industry and it can apply to other industries. If you are really transactional, no, you're not going to get a seat at that client's table.
I think
Okay.
so. I
So
think you're right.
you have to educate yourself. You've got to be willing to have the kind of conversation we're having about what was their work from home strategy? How did that impact this, and really be able
Yeah.
to, and it's beyond the scope of today, but really be able to go to the client and be able to add value and have a meaningful business conversation,
Yeah.
which will inevitably open up what most sales, again, I'm sticking with our industry. Do you have a job for me? Are you hiring? I see you posted a accountant job. I can help you with that.
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
that's gone.
Yeah.
That's
Scott.
gone. Or the fake candidates, right? Ringing
Oh, don't get me
people up
started
with
with
the fake candidate,
Yeah.
right? You've got to have a candidate. You've got to have a real, they may not be the right candidate for that role. That's not what I'm saying. But if you're pretending that you can suddenly deliver 50 contractors in this skill set Monday, and you don't have 50 contractors, 50 temps, whatever the case may be, you're going to get egg on your face.
Yeah.
And that's a door closed, right?
Yeah.
So I think to kind of try and answer the question, I think each and every person in our industry needs to equip themselves with more than just filling a role. They've got to be able to have that conversation, and and it can't be a superficial conversation. It can't be, well, tell me how last year went for you, right?
Yeah, I think what I've discovered, especially with some of the companies I'm working with at the moment, is that conversation has to be about the future, not about the past. Acknowledge the past and say, "Oh, it's a tough year, yeah." So what's going on now, and then kind of focus on the future. And I think kind of answering that question in a slightly different way. The only way they can avoid making those mistakes is if they know they're making those mistakes. So having that conversation about into the future, but also having, especially if I'm a niche recruiter in the engineering market, so I kind of know what that guy's competitors are doing. So I will say, so and so is doing this with their staff, or so and so is doing this with their staff, and this is how they're managing it, and just gleaming little bits of information from all your clients, and then packaging it up and giving it to your new clients or your old clients, so that it sounds like you have that market knowledge, which you do, because it's real information, real-time information about recruitment and how they're finding staff at the same time. So maybe to answer that question again is be that person that they can't avoid that mistake.
Solution.
Be the solution. Yeah.
And,
or come with the solution.
Yeah. And one thing I will say, sometimes you don't know the answer, and it's okay to say, you know what, Mr. Klein, good point. I don't have, now, obviously, if it's something you should know, that's not what I'm talking about. But if you do get that question you didn't anticipate, it's okay to say, I don't know, but I'm going to go away and I'm going to get that information for you.
Exactly. I mean, in that situation then, you and I kind of muddled through that thinking, wow, what would we have done in that situation if we come across those clients? And it is about projecting yourself into that scenario and looking at it from different angles and how you would approach it personally. And that might be the solution. That might be the solution. If not, you will find the solution for them. If you deem your job the way I deem my job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yeah.
I think you'd actually hit on a point there. I think right now, don't look at yourself as being self-employed or employed. Put the self-employed hat on for a moment.
Yeah.
And I promise you, if you do that, crazy ideas will flow, right?
It's true.
It's true. Crazy ideas will flow. And people that know me know that I have a million crazy ideas.
Yeah.
One of them works.
Yeah, but also to be creative and come up with these crazy ideas, you've got to get out of that mindset of survival mode at the same time. And I find a lot of my friends in the recruitment and people I speak to, people approach me randomly and ask me questions as well in the recruitment industry, which I love, by the way. I'm not moaning about it. Are in that survival mode and they've lost that creativity. And I realized this last year for myself, that if you take yourself out of that survival mode and focus in an almost NLP way, you will create those answers and solutions to problems. And that's how I approach not just recruitment, but content, podcasts, blogs, doing stuff like this as well with it.
No, fair point. I mean, I just want to go to a question. It's
Sure.
starting to take us off track. What are your thoughts on resigning, working from home, especially now that ghosting is very common? I think it's important on how you had. What are your thoughts on resigning while working from home, especially now that ghosting is very common? Okay, so I think there's two questions there. Is there two questions
Yeah,
there?
there's two questions, and the second question is a huge psychological issue that I have with with society. But I'll answer the first question. This is me, okay? This is not advice. This is just what I do. Never resign a job until you got a job offer. That's my personal. Even in good times, even people then put caveats to it and say, "What about if your boss is bullying you? What about if you're not happy in your job? What about?" And I get those things that happen to people, but if you're working from home, it's a bit of a beast. You had enough for the employer that you're working for. Go and look for a job until you get an offer, then take another job. I get it, it's hard, but try your best to kind of get through it. But in kind of connection to that, with ghosting is very common. It's common not just in recruitment, it's common in society as well. Dating apps, people talk about being ghosted all the time. I got ghosted the other day by my local supermarket with an order I had, and I'm still waiting for it to bloody come through. I had to go down and just buy the stuff in the end. But ghosting seems to be a societal issue that we need to really work on as a society. And it's not just a Canada issue or UK issue or South Africa issue or Australian issue. It's a human issue. It's the easiest way to solve a problem, it seems to me, is like a river going through the path of least resistance. And that's how we deal with problems. We just ignore them, close our eyes, and hope they go away. So ghosting is not a common issue with recruitment. But if you're being ghosted, how about take some responsibility for your job application as well and go after the people that are ghosting you? Pick up the phone. Sorry, Suki, I know you're a rec to rec, but I want to. If you ghosted me, I'll be phoning you. Why? What's going on with this job? And if you don't have the answers, then it's obvious I'm not successful. I know it sounds horrible, and we've got to be a little bit grown up about that. But yeah, first question: don't resign unless you really, really have to. Really have to. To be honest with you.
It's like everything, right? Try and be proactive instead of reactive.
Yeah.
Right?
Be the recruiter I know you are.
There you go. I like that.
Yeah.
Also, the reality is, for those people that aren't in the recruitment industry watching this, sometimes the recruiter is not intentionally ghosting you. Stuff happens. Stuff slips through. It happens to me. Slips through the net. Right?
I've done it. I've
Yeah,
done it myself.
happens. And clients don't give the feedback. Remember, no recruiter wants to not give you feedback, because giving feedback means the process is moving forward or something's happening in the process.
Yeah.
The bottleneck is the client, is the employer.
And sometimes the ghoster is the client. I know that doesn't make it, two wrongs don't make a right there. We should carry on that ghosting.
Yeah.
We have got to take responsibility and inform the candidate and have a better system of informing candidates. And it's not always possible. CRMs, ATSs, some of them are a bag of crap, and you can't track that information. Have I got back to the 25 candidates I spoke to today? It's very difficult to do that. But sometimes the problem is further down the line, and employers, they've got to sell the goods that they're trying to sell or do the stuff they're trying to do, and recruitment. We've just got to do recruitment and speak to candidates and speak to future clients at the same time. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of parts moving, and one person will fall out of that. And most of the time, it's because there's nothing to say. But if we've got nothing to say, we still should say something. So what I'm trying to say is everyone needs to come to the party at the same time. So if you're being ghosted, solve it. Try to work out what's going on. If you're the recruiter ghosted, you need to solve that. You need to stop doing that. And if you're the employer ghosting the agency, then I'm sorry, you're going to lose good people at the same time. So you need to solve that as well.
But I think also the piece I just want to add, and again, I'm not defending any party here.
No.
When someone is working from home, kids are screaming in the background, whatever their situation is, right? Yeah. Stuff happens. So it goes back to what I said earlier on. Choose your words carefully.
Yes.
choose your words carefully. You don't know what someone is going through. Just because they are on a Zoom call, Teams, whatever it is, and they're smiling, well, it's okay. Every one of us can fake a smile for an hour when stuff is crumbling in the background, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things I've
And
been
we're all good at that, by the way.
yeah,
Everyone's good at that.
yeah,
Everyone's good at smiling whilst the house is on fire,
yeah.
and it's easy to do. It's really easy to fall into that trap.
And it's
Yeah,
if right now with working from home, it's so important. And the other part I want to say, even if you're the person working from home, as I said earlier, manager could be dealing with who knows what. Just because they're not sharing for whatever reason doesn't mean that. Because here's the thing: it all comes down, right? It comes. The pressure comes top down. When your clients are putting pressure on you, they're getting pressure from the powers above there,
yes,
right?
yes.
So, it's what the pandemic has certainly taught me is definitely choose my words carefully, choose where I'm investing my energy as well. Like, I'm no good working from home. I don't enjoy it. Right. So I much prefer being in the office. So I'm one of those people that as much time in the office as I can. Would I do 5 days a week? No, that's not what I want to do. But I much prefer the office. So for me, working from home is really, really hard. And you know what? Sometimes it's exhaustion because when I leave the office, I leave the office. I
Yes.
have that hour and a half drive home to get out of, not that I do, but to kind of like get out of work mode. And
It's interesting you say that. That's one part about working from home for 6 years that I have missed the most is getting on the train. I know this sounds crazy. Commuting, what? That's expensive. But getting on a train, sticking your headphones on, and just listening to podcast, music, whatever it is you're listening to, and decompressing, and just that transition from work to home in that tube of 45,000 people.
yeah,
you know what I mean?
but
All
we
doing the
miss it,
same
right?
thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I generally miss that's the bit I miss. What I do as a solution to that, I just go out for a walk with the kids for an hour, and it's better in the summer months. If admittedly, in the winter months, it's harder to do. But yeah, it's you need that decompression at the end of the day. I personally think
you do. And in the morning, like today, I was in the office. I was a little late today, so it must have been about 7:15 by the time I walked in. So, and I had that quiet time
yeah,
before anybody else came in.
I love that bit.
Yeah, that quiet time, right? It's getting ready for the day, all the rest of it, and then the evening, it's unwinding. But what is your advice to those people that are working from home, individuals who their stress release is the gym? Is well, running you can still do. It's things
Yeah,
like the gym and stuff like that. I don't know anywhere else, but we're back in lockdown, right?
yeah.
So, how do you look after your mental well-being when all of
It's
those stuffs are limited?
yeah. I took my methodology of working from home from so I did an NLP certification many years ago, and there's a technique called anchoring within NLP, and that's where it started for me. Where I utilized that, I had a spare room, and I went in that spare room and I anchored myself. This is my workplace. This is where I do my work, and when I step out that room, I'm now back home. And weirdly enough, opening the doors, the commute. That was one of the things I did in my head as well. But it's all about trying to anchor yourself in this place. So whatever you do inside that room, if it's a room or a workspace, because it's not always a dining room table, it's a very difficult thing to do. But it's all about picking a spot and an area around you, making it look and feel like work, a quiet spot. Not always possible when you live in a flat in the middle of a city and you've got two kids running around. But try to do this right. This is my workspace. This is what I do, and this is where I anchor. And then start building off the back of that. When you've mastered that, build little things off the back of that. And a lot of people say to me, how do you solve things like doing the washing up, because I seem to go off on a tangent and do washing up, or put the clothes in the washing machine, or I go and do these little things. That's fine. Do it. Put these things into your day as chores, and what you'll end up doing, you start work at 8 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, however you want to do it. You drop the kids off, or however you want to do it. Work solidly for a period of time that you feel comfortable working solidly for, and have a list of achievements you want to do in that time. Then take a break. What's the problem? Take that break, go and do those little chores, refresh your mind, go outside for a walk, have a cigarette or a cup of coffee, whatever you want to do, and then go back to your desk and then work for that period of time as well. What I found near the beginning, I used to work 6-7 hours without a break, without going to the toilet, without a drink, and I'd be knackered at the end of the day. Whereas when I started doing this over the years, what I found was I had more energy, and I found myself being able to decompress quicker at the end of the day. So come 6-7 o'clock, sometimes you have calls going on into the night. I sometimes speak to people in supermarkets, but I'll come to why in a second. But that to me is that you get to 6 o'clock, and because you've done this system of on and off and just doing the right things and hitting those little achievements, you can switch off very quickly then at the end of the day. You can close that door, or you can close the laptop, and you're back in home mode and off you go. But the reason that coming back to speaking to people in supermarkets, there's something you do need to accept with working from home. It's very difficult, as most of us know, but also it's not about a work-life balance anymore. It's a work-life integration, because you may be taking calls on the weekend when you're with your family. You could try to separate family time, but sometimes you get that email and you think, it's Sunday afternoon, I should be really spending time with my family, but I've got to keep this conversation going because this is quite important. I can make X amount of money or this amount of commission from it. So accept that. Don't stress about it. Just ride with it, rather than think, right, I can't do this now, and stress yourself out about these things. So accept these things. It's a work-life integration working from home.
I love that. I think that is so true, because one can't exist without the other.
You can't. They can't.
Right? And everywhere you read, work-life balance. But I love the way you describe it. And the other thing I've been doing in my coaching practice is when people are saying, oh my God, my to-do list. I don't do a to-do list. I have a success list. And the psychological impact to that is brilliant, because the only things you're putting on that are stuff that's going to make you successful. So if it's a boring administrative thing, know, like for us, I knew we have to get
I've written it there. Focus on what makes you. It's my notes, and that's it. You got to focus on what makes you money, and that was one of the things I did setting up my own business. Was I got rid of all the crap that you had in corporate recruitment world, and it was even in the SME recruitment world as well. I'm focused on the things that actually did the job, and got rid of all the things that personally I don't think spending 3 hours on the phone should be KPI. That's my personal opinion. People do it, and they really don't do that much from it. Focus on what makes you money. Right, speaking to this guy is going to make me money. I need to speak to this guy. Writing this advert's going to make me money. I need to write this advert, and spend time doing that and putting effort into those things. And you'll start realizing your job gets a lot easier over time.
No, it's true. Everybody says they don't like sales, right? I'm one of those people. I don't like net new business. But you know what? I have to do it. Yes. So it goes on my success list, not because I want to do it. It's if I don't do that, the fun stuff doesn't happen.
This is it. Is it. But when you say like you don't like sales in your business, what part of it don't you like? Oh, I don't like speaking to people in a cold call. Well, stop doing cold calls then. Find a way of making every call you make warm. How do you do that? Approach people on LinkedIn first. Have a conversation. Start building relationships.
The danger there is people stay on LinkedIn. People stay behind the emails. So let's be clear.
Yeah, no, what I'm not saying is you just email all day long. Yeah. I have a system, and I'm going to give this away for free. I have a system where I'll approach someone on LinkedIn. If they respond to me, I will call them straight away. Same with emails. If they respond, we've all got statistics we can see with our emails, especially if you use certain clients to do your emails with. And if they've read my email they're on my hit list to speak to. And it opens, they already seen your email and read it. They already know who you are. You're now following up with a call the next day or the next week, however you want to do it. But psychologically, mostly for you, they know who you are, even if they
Yep.
read that email once. And
Yep.
that really helps you pick up the phone and do that thing. So do things that make you money. Don't worry about the things that don't make you money. Keep away from them.
The
Pay
piece
someone to do it.
the piece I would add to that as well is make sure you're targeting the right people. Don't just
Know your market as well. Yes.
know your market and be prepared for a question to come up or something. So it goes back to what I was saying earlier.
Sorry, Suki. Yeah.
How do you do sales? Is that transactional recruiter? If you're a transactional recruiter, you're gonna sink pretty fast.
Yeah.
If you don't know your market and if you don't know what's happening out there.
The pandemic has made the job of a transactional recruiter 10 times harder because there was a piece of my business where it was transactional and it's dead in the water, absolutely dead in the water. So it's kind of like, okay, that doesn't work anymore. What do I do differently? And you suddenly rely on your skills as a person, your personality, the way you come across on social media, and you start relying on those skills, which sadly some recruiters don't have. Sadly.
Yeah. But it's true though, right? I'm mindful of time, and I want to ask you. I want to ask you a question. What advice do you have for leaders?
I'm huge. I love Simon Sinek, and I love reading stuff about leaders, and the biggest, as I used to manage teams for large corporate businesses and small businesses as well. And the one tip I used to give back then to anyone that wanted to become managers or just become managers is exactly what Simon Sinek made a book about, which really annoys me. I wish I wrote it now before him, which is Leaders Eat Last, which basically means help your team, feed your team, be the person that helps and supplies them and gets them to success. Be that person that does that. If you're billing managers is one thing, but if you're a billing manager and you can afford to give away work, then give it to the people which are struggling and coach them along and build them up. Because what you'll find is if you move the narrative away from working from home towards let's work as a team, it's not so much now I'm working from home. I'm now working as a team, but my office happens to be my dining room table. And that's how you need to, it's almost like a distraction technique. I know that sounds kind of weird saying it like that, but it's about moving people away from that psychology of thinking I'm alone. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. What's happening in the world? I'm really worried about the COVID vaccine, or I'm worried about my husband losing his job, or, these type of things. And suddenly you're back in the room with your boss or on MS Teams every day. But your boss is doing that with you. It is a psychological methodology of engaging people within your team, but it needs to be genuine as well. So you need to really be a caring boss at the same time. And that's got
to get in the trenches.
You got it, and this is it. I worked in the Air Force, and the guys that were senior level, flight sergeants and even more senior officers that got down there with you and put the overalls on and got dirty with you and went to the pub with you as well. They had a lot of respect and people trusted them and really, whenever they said jump, you okay, yeah, sure, because you trusted why you needed to do that. But they only can do that if they're with you and doing the job with you. And I know one guy that would get into the team and say, right, what BD calls you got to do today? And they'll say, I got this list of 50 clients. And you go, well, I'll do it in front of you. And that's a manager doing BD calls in front. And he was quite a senior level person within that business. That builds trust. That shows leadership in a way that you will not believe in this world.
I agree. I think one of the mistakes some leaders, and I'm talking your country managers and that level of executive leader I've seen make last year, is they've stayed in their ivory towers and told people what to do.
Yeah.
Great. I'm not taking away. It's a tough job. right? I'm not taking away all of that. But what they didn't do was say, you know what, I'm going to walk an hour in your shoes. So to then be able to get that appreciation for how
Yeah.
hard it really, really was. Now, if you're on $500,000, right, likelihood is you've got enough space to go and have a study,
Yeah.
right? We can shut the door.
Yeah.
If you're on $50,000 and the kids are home, you may not necessarily be able to have that space,
Yeah.
right? So it's the people that really, and I think that's one of the mistakes
But
companies
but
made.
But also, when you're talking large corporate-sized businesses and even managing directors of medium-sized businesses, some of these guys haven't done recruitment for 20 years.
Yeah,
So they
true.
don't even know what it's like to do recruitment today, let alone in a pandemic when everything's on fire and everyone's dying. It is a different world to do that. But what skill you can bring to that situation is don't be the flappy person telling everyone they're fired or be made redundant. Be the person that says, right, let's calm it down. Let's focus on what we need to do and be visible. And that's one thing some senior people do in businesses, like you say, they hide in the ivory towers and they're not visible. The local
Yeah,
headmaster of my son's school, in a year, I've not seen him or heard from him for the last 12 months. I've not heard from him. And all I hear from is the teachers. My respect for that guy is virtually zero now. I want
yep,
to hear from him. What's going on in the school? Why have I got to hear from the supply teacher what's happening or the substitute student teacher what's happening? I want to hear from you. And that's what your staff want to do. They want to hear from you. And even if it's a blog a week telling them what's going on in the world and your thoughts on it, that's still hearing from you. If you can't, I would like them to put themselves on video and send the video to everyone. That's what I would
no,
love to do.
I would like some of them to say, you know what, I've actually got a client out of the US. She runs the Americas, and she actually does that. I'll
Brilliant.
credit to her. She actually does a sales hour. She doesn't do it every month, but her team respect her. So the whole of the Americas, they pick a time, and for an hour, and she'll be making sales calls. So it's that team's,
Wow,
yeah,
that's it.
and she'll do it. And honestly, so I'm coaching a lot of her executives and a couple of her desk level people, and that's where I heard it from. I didn't hear it from her that she does it. I heard it from them, and firsthand the the results of it and how it made those individuals feel. They will take a bullet for her because they know
And
she was in the trenches.
there we go. And that's when you know you as a leader, you've done really well. And you'll see some people on LinkedIn, you look at their testimonials on LinkedIn and you'll see their staff have written stuff about them as managers. And that's powerful. That means to me that they have done exactly what they should have done as a leader in that role. And if you haven't got that and you're a leader, try working a way out to get that from your staff. That's that kind of thought process.
Yeah. So look, we're coming up to the hour now, so we could continue.
Can we have
I
another
guess, yeah. I think what I would end with here is the reality is we're not in a perfect situation.
Correct.
We're not in a perfect situation. If you're working from home, control what you can control,
Yes. Control what you
right?
control. Keep it simple, and take when you do the things you can control. Take control of them.
Yep.
Really take control of them and take responsibility for them as well, because then you will feel a lot better about what's going on around you and how it works.
Yeah.
And
And once you've done that, once you've taken that responsibility, then you have a decision to make.
yeah, and that
Right.
decision could be as simple as suck it up and get on with it, or I need to speak to Suki for a new job.
Good one. Good one. And as for leaders, I've been saying this throughout and I'll say it again. Get out of your ivory towers.
Yeah.
Stop putting all these posts out there about how fantastic you are as a company to work for. Start listening to what your teams are saying,
Yeah.
because the market is burning hot right now. If you haven't looked after your team, and I don't mean made it easy for them, that's not what I'm talking about, right? They just need to feel they have been heard. If they feel they've been unheard, they're out of there.
Yeah.
right?
And read Simon Sinek's book as well.
There you go, right? So anyhow, thank you ever so much for joining us today. I really, really appreciate it. If anybody wants to reach out to you,
yeah, I'm always on. I'm huge on LinkedIn. As in, I'm not big. Oh God, I mean, I'm always on LinkedIn. I'm a big advocate of LinkedIn. I'm crap at all the others, basically.
Okay, cool. So people should just reach out to you. Mark, thanks ever so much for your time. I really, really appreciate this.
No, thank you.
And everybody, thanks for listening. Thanks for your questions. And if you have any questions because you're listening to this afterwards, whichever platform you're coming from, throw a comment in and Mark and I will try and answer them.
Definitely.
All right. Thanks ever so much. Take
Bye,
care.
everyone.
Bye for now.